Girl returns from death with a horrifying message from Jesus. It was a warm summer afternoon in the quiet suburban neighborhood where Emily lived. The air buzzed with the sounds of cicadas, and children's laughter echoed through the streets as they played games in the yards and parks. Emily, a 14-year-old girl with a curious mind and a contagious laugh, had decided to ride her bike to meet her friends at the park. She had always loved the freedom of riding, the wind in her hair, and the endless possibilities of adventure ahead. Her parents had reminded her, as they always did, to be careful on the roads. She had smiled and waved as she set off, blissfully unaware of how much her life was about to change. The sun was bright, the sky a clear blue, and everything about the day felt perfect, until the moment it wasn't. Emily pedaled down her usual route, the wheels of her bike humming softly on the asphalt. She approached an intersection she had crossed countless times before. The light was green, and she moved forward without a second thought. But what she didn't see, what no one could have predicted, was the car speeding toward her. The driver, distracted for just a moment, failed to notice the red light. In a split second, the car plowed through the intersection, slamming into Emily and throwing her several feet into the air. The scene was chaos. Bystanders screamed, rushing to her side as the car screeched to a halt. Emily's small frame lay motionless on the pavement, her bike twisted and mangled nearby. A man dialed emergency services, his hands shaking as he tried to describe the horrific accident. Time seemed to slow as everyone held their breath, waiting for some sign of life from the young girl. But Emily didn't move. When the paramedics arrived, they quickly assessed her condition. Her pulse was faint, her breathing shallow. Moments later, her heart stopped altogether. The medics worked tirelessly, performing CPR as they raced to the hospital. But Emily was gone. For over 10 minutes, there was no heartbeat, no sign of life. Her parents arrived at the hospital shortly after, their faces pale with fear and shock. As they were escorted to the waiting room, the doctors fought to revive their daughter, their expressions grim. But Emily wasn't in the hospital anymore. As she lay lifeless, something extraordinary was happening. Emily later described feeling herself being pulled away from her body. At first, it was disorienting. She could see the doctors working on her, hear the frantic voices of the medical staff, and even sense her parents' panic in the hallway. But soon, the scene below her faded, and she was enveloped by a light so pure and warm that it filled her with an indescribable peace. The light grew brighter, and Emily found herself in a realm unlike anything she had ever known. It was neither earth nor heaven as she had imagined it. It was something far beyond her comprehension. The air shimmered with colors she had never seen before, and a melody, soft and ethereal, seemed to surround her. Every sound, every color, every sensation was alive, vibrating with a kind of energy that made her feel completely at home. She looked around, marveling at the beauty of this place, and then she saw him. A figure appeared before her, radiant and clothed in white. His presence was commanding yet gentle, and she felt no fear, only a deep, overwhelming sense of love and safety. She knew instantly who he was. It was Jesus. Emily couldn't find the words to speak, but she didn't need to. Jesus' gaze met hers, and she felt as though he already understood everything. Her questions, her confusion, her awe. He extended his hand to her, and without hesitation, she took it. The moment she did, a wave of warmth and light washed over her, and she felt every worry, every doubt, every ounce of fear melt away. "You are not here by accident," Jesus said, his voice resonating with a profound gentleness that seemed to echo through her entire being. "There is something you must see, something you must understand before you return." Before she could process his words, her surroundings began to change. The glowing realm around her dissolved, and she found herself looking down at Earth, suspended as though she were standing among the stars. The planet glowed with a beauty that took her breath away, its oceans shimmering like liquid sapphire, its continents alive with color and life. But as she watched, the scene began to shift. The Earth's vibrant beauty was interrupted by flashes of chaos, wildfires raging through forests, cities collapsing under floods, and people fleeing from disasters. The images came in rapid succession, overwhelming her senses. Emily turned to Jesus, her heart heavy with what she was seeing. "Why are you showing me this?" she asked, her voice trembling. "These are the choices humanity faces," Jesus said, his tone steady but serious. "The world is at a crossroads, and the future is not yet written. What you see is what could be, but it is not what must be." As the images continued, Emily saw something that stood out from the chaos. Among the destruction and division, there were moments of light, people coming together to help one another, communities rebuilding after disasters, and individuals standing up for what was right. These glimpses of hope felt like a lifeline, a reminder that not all was lost. "You have a part to play in this," Jesus told her. "You must share what you've seen so others can understand what is at stake. The choices made today will shape the world of tomorrow." Emily nodded, her resolve growing despite the weight of what she had been shown. But then the vision shifted again, and she was about to witness something that would stay with her forever. As Emily continued to gaze upon the earth from this heavenly perspective, the visions became more vivid and urgent. She saw moments of breathtaking beauty, forests alive with color, rivers flowing with crystal clarity, and people celebrating life in ways that resonated with love and unity. But these scenes were fleeting, quickly replaced by others that filled her with a deep unease. Towering cities were reduced to rubble, their skylines consumed by smoke and fire. Crowds of people screamed and ran, their faces twisted in fear as floods surged and winds howled. She wanted to look away, but something compelled her to keep watching. The devastation wasn't random. It seemed to have a pattern, a cause rooted in human choices. She saw people arguing, their anger spilling over into violence. Greed and selfishness played out on a global scale, leaving entire communities to suffer while a few prospered. The natural disasters weren't just acts of nature, they were consequences, the result of neglect, exploitation, and division. As Emily's heart sank under the weight of what she was witnessing, Jesus placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Do not lose hope," he said, his voice calm and steady. "There is more to see." Suddenly the visions shifted. Among the chaos a figure appeared, a man standing amidst the turmoil. His presence was strong, unshaken by the storm around him. Emily immediately recognized him. It was Donald Trump. She watched as he stood before a crowd, addressing them with urgency and determination. The reactions were mixed. Some people cheered, rallying behind him with unwavering support, while others jeered, their anger and discontent palpable. Emily's confusion grew. She had heard all the polarizing opinions about Trump, admiration from some, disdain from others. She turned to Jesus for clarity. "Why him?" she asked. "Why is he here, in the middle of all this?" Jesus' expression softened, filled with understanding. "He is not without flaws," he said. "But he has been placed here for a purpose. His role is not to save humanity, but to act as a catalyst, to bring hidden truths to the surface." Emily's attention returned to the vision where Trump was facing a relentless wave of opposition. She saw him in meetings, at rallies, and in moments of solitude where he appeared burdened by the weight of his responsibilities. Yet he never faltered. Each challenge seemed to forge his resolve, making him stronger. Jesus explained that this adversity was not without meaning. "It is through trials that strength is tested," he said. "He has faced these challenges not for his sake, but to push humanity to confront what it must." The vision shifted again, this time to a futuristic city. The skyline was unlike anything Emily had ever seen. Sleek buildings reached into the sky, illuminated by a soft, otherworldly glow. The streets below were alive with activity, but it wasn't the chaos of earlier scenes. Instead, there was harmony. Robots and humans worked side by side, not in opposition, but in collaboration. Technology wasn't a threat here. It was a tool for progress, used to heal, to create, and to unite. At the center of this city stood a Tesla Cybertruck, its futuristic design a symbol of innovation. But just as Emily focused on the scene, an explosion ripped through the air. The Cybertruck, parked near a hotel, was engulfed in flames. People screamed and scattered, and the harmony of the moment was shattered. Emily's heart raced as she turned to Jesus for answers. "The explosion represents more than destruction," Jesus said. "It is a manifestation of the spiritual battle being waged on earth. Forces of darkness seek to destroy progress, to turn humanity against itself. The devil works tirelessly to sow confusion, fear, and division." Emily felt a chill as the next vision unfolded. She saw shadowy figures conspiring in secret, their intent clear: to bring down Trump. Assassination attempts played out before her eyes, plots foiled at the last moment, but their presence undeniable. She watched as his motorcade was ambushed, as sniper rifles were aimed and intercepted, as a hotel parking lot turned into chaos when the Cybertruck exploded. Each scene was more harrowing than the last. "These attacks are not merely against a man," Jesus explained. "They are against what he represents, a challenge to the forces that seek to control and divide. The devil knows that unity and truth are his greatest enemies, and he will stop at nothing to silence those who disrupt his plans." Emily's mind swirled with questions, but one stood out above all. "What can we do?" she asked, her voice trembling. "How can we stop this?" Jesus' gaze was steady, filled with both seriousness and hope. "It begins with understanding," he said. "The devil thrives in darkness, in ignorance and fear. But when light is brought to these places, his power diminishes. Humanity must choose to seek truth, to stand for what is right, even when it is difficult." The scene shifted again, and Emily saw moments of light amid the darkness. Communities banded together to rebuild after disasters. People reached across divides to support one another, and acts of kindness rippled out, creating waves of change. Even technology, so often feared, was used to heal the planet, to connect people, and to bring solutions to problems that once seemed insurmountable. Emily realized that the horrifying message she had witnessed wasn't meant to instill fear. It was a call to action. The future wasn't set in stone, it was being shaped every day by the choices humanity made. Trump's role, the technology, the challenges, and even the devil's schemes were all part of a larger story, one where hope could still prevail. As the visions faded, Emily felt the weight of her mission settle on her shoulders. She didn't yet know how she would share what she had seen, but she knew she had to. The stakes were too high, and the message too important to keep to herself. Emily's heart raced as the visions began to fade, and the brilliance of the heavenly realm around her dimmed. For the first time since she had entered this otherworldly place, she felt a sense of urgency pulling her back toward the life she had left behind. The peace she had felt earlier was replaced by the weight of everything she had witnessed. Her chest tightened with the realization that she had been entrusted with a message of incredible importance, one that she knew could change the course of humanity if people chose to listen. The pull grew stronger, and she felt herself descending from the light. The celestial colors faded, replaced by the cold, sterile whites and blues of the hospital room. The beeping of machines filled her ears, along with the muffled sounds of voices, her parents' desperate prayers, the doctor's hurried instructions, and the hum of the machines working to bring her back. With a sudden, jarring gasp, her body jolted and her eyes fluttered open. Her parents rushed to her side, tears streaming down their faces as they hugged her tightly. The doctors stood stunned, exchanging glances of disbelief. Emily had been clinically dead for over 10 minutes, yet here she was, alive and coherent. It was nothing short of a miracle, but for Emily, the true miracle was the clarity she now carried. She hadn't just returned to life, she had returned with purpose. As the days passed, Emily began to recover physically, but her mind was consumed with the visions she had seen. She replayed them over and over, each detail seared into her memory. The chaos, the hope, the role of Donald Trump, and the spiritual battle waging in the background. It was overwhelming, but she knew she couldn't keep it to herself. She had been shown these things for a reason, and that reason wasn't to stay silent. Her first challenge was telling her parents. They had always been loving and supportive, but how could she explain something so profound, so otherworldly? One evening, as they sat by her hospital bed, she took a deep breath and began to speak. She told them about the light, the peace, and her encounter with Jesus. She described the visions of Earth's future, the role Trump played, and the horrifying attempts by dark forces to derail the progress of humanity. Her parents listened intently, their expressions shifting between awe, disbelief, and deep concern. Her mother was the first to speak. "Emily," she said softly, "what you're saying, it's extraordinary. But are you sure it wasn't a dream? Or maybe something your mind created while you were unconscious?" Emily shook her head firmly. "It wasn't a dream, Mum. It was more real than anything I've ever experienced. I saw things I couldn't possibly know. And Jesus spoke to me. He told me I had to share what I saw." Her father, though skeptical, couldn't deny the conviction in her voice. "If this is true," he said, "then it's a lot for a young girl to carry. Are you sure you're ready for this?" Emily hesitated for a moment, the weight of his words sinking in. But then she remembered Jesus' reassurance, his steady presence, and the clarity of his message. "I don't think I have a choice," she replied. "People need to hear this." Her parents agreed to support her, though they remained cautious about how others might react. As Emily began to share her story with close friends and family, the reactions were mixed. Some were inspired, moved by her words and the vividness of her descriptions. Others were skeptical, dismissing her experience as a product of her imagination or a side effect of her trauma. But Emily didn't let the doubters deter her. She had seen too much, felt too much, to question the truth of what had happened. One night, as Emily lay awake, she found herself thinking again about the horrifying visions she had seen. The assassination attempts on Trump, the explosion outside the hotel, and the shadowy forces working in the background, all of it felt like pieces of a puzzle. She began to understand that the spiritual battle wasn't just about one man or one moment in history. It was about the choices humanity made every day. The devil's attacks were designed to create fear and division, to distract people from the good they could accomplish together. Emily realized that while the visions had been terrifying, they weren't meant to paralyze her with fear. They were a call to action, a reminder that light could always overcome darkness if people chose to stand together. The forces of evil relied on secrecy and confusion, but Emily knew that by shedding light on their schemes, she could help weaken their hold. The next day, she began writing down everything she could remember from her experience. She filled page after page with vivid descriptions of the heavenly realm, the messages Jesus had given her, and the images of Earth's future. As she wrote, she felt a sense of clarity and purpose, as though she were channeling the words directly from the source. She didn't know who would read her words or how they would be received, but she knew she had to try. Her story began to spread, reaching people in her community and beyond. Some dismissed it outright, but many found themselves captivated by her message. They were struck by the balance of her account, how it acknowledged the challenges humanity faced while offering a vision of hope and redemption. Emily's words reminded them that the future wasn't set in stone. It was something they had the power to shape. As Emily continued to share her story, she noticed a shift in the way people responded. Conversations about faith, responsibility, and the role of leaders like Trump began to take on a new depth. People who had once been divided by politics or ideology started to find common ground in their shared desire for a better future. Emily's message wasn't just about one man or one vision. It was about humanity's ability to rise above its fears and work together toward something greater. The horrifying message of the devil's attempts to undermine progress wasn't just a warning, it was a challenge. Emily realized that by confronting these dark forces head-on, by exposing their schemes and refusing to give in to fear, people could take back their power. And in doing so, they could create a future filled with light, love, and hope. For Emily, that was the greatest revelation of all. As Emily's story continued to spread, it began to reach people far beyond her small town. News outlets picked it up, and soon she was being invited to share her experience on podcasts, in churches, and even at community gatherings. Each time she told her story, the response was electric. People were drawn to the sincerity in her voice and the conviction in her words. They weren't just captivated by the otherworldly elements of her experience. They were moved by the urgency of her message. Emily found that her visions of Donald Trump stirred some of the strongest reactions. To some, her description of his role as a catalyst resonated deeply. They saw him as a controversial figure who had forced people to confront uncomfortable truths about society, leadership, and the choices they made. To others, her vision seemed implausible or even absurd. Trump was too divisive, they argued, too flawed to play such a significant role in the spiritual battle Emily described. But Emily stood firm. She didn't claim that Trump was perfect. In fact, she often emphasized that his imperfections were part of the point. The trials he faced, the constant opposition, and the vitriol directed at him were all part of a larger plan to bring hidden issues to light. "It's not about whether you like him or agree with him," she would explain. "It's about understanding that he's part of something bigger, something that challenges all of us to think about what we really stand for." Her recounting of the assassination attempts and the explosion outside the hotel brought another layer of intrigue and fear to her story. She described these events not as isolated incidents, but as manifestations of a deeper spiritual battle. The devil's attempts to eliminate Trump, she explained, weren't just about silencing one man. They were about disrupting a movement, creating fear, and preventing people from coming together to face the challenges of the future. Emily's mention of the Tesla Cybertruck became a particularly striking symbol for many listeners. She described it as a representation of innovation, progress, and the potential for humanity to use technology for good. The explosion in her vision, then, wasn't just a physical attack. It was an attack on hope, on the possibility of a better future. It was a reminder that progress would always be met with resistance from forces that thrived on division and despair. Despite the heavy nature of her message, Emily always made sure to end on a note of hope. She reminded her audiences that while the spiritual battle was real, it wasn't unwinnable. "The devil's greatest weapon is fear," she would say, "but fear loses its power when you choose to act with faith and love." As Emily's message spread, she began to see its impact. People started reaching out to her, sharing their own stories of faith, doubt, and the struggles they faced. Some told her that her words had inspired them to reconnect with their spiritual beliefs. Others said they had begun to rethink the way they approached their relationships, their work, and their role in the world. They wanted to be part of the solution, to contribute to the light that Emily spoke about so passionately. Communities began organizing events inspired by Emily's vision. They hosted discussions about how to bridge divides, support one another, and create a more hopeful future. Churches and spiritual groups explored ways to incorporate her message into their teachings, emphasizing the importance of unity, responsibility, and resilience in the face of challenges. Emily, despite her young age, became a source of inspiration for people of all walks of life. She didn't see herself as a prophet or a savior, just a girl who had been given a glimpse of something extraordinary and felt compelled to share it. She often told people, "This isn't about me, it's about us. It's about what we choose to do with the time and opportunities we've been given." One of the most powerful aspects of Emily's story was her ability to connect the spiritual and the practical. She didn't just talk about faith in abstract terms, she tied it to real-world choices and actions. Her vision of technology, for example, resonated with engineers, scientists, and innovators who were grappling with the ethical implications of their work. Her emphasis on unity struck a chord with community leaders trying to address division and conflict. And her message about the power of love over fear inspired countless individuals to take small, meaningful steps to make a difference in their own lives. As time went on, Emily's story became less about the extraordinary events of her near-death experience and more about the movement it had sparked. People began to see her as a symbol of hope, a reminder that even in the face of overwhelming darkness, light could prevail. Her words became a rallying cry for those who wanted to create a better world, not through fear or force, but through compassion, collaboration, and a shared sense of purpose. Emily herself never lost sight of the gravity of her mission. She knew that the message she carried wasn't just about warning people of the dangers ahead. It was about inspiring them to rise above those dangers and create something better. She believed deeply in humanity's potential to overcome its challenges, and she dedicated herself to reminding others of that potential, no matter how difficult the journey might be. In the end, Emily's story wasn't just about what she had seen during her near-death experience. It was about what she inspired others to see in themselves. She showed people that they had the power to shape the future, to stand against the forces of darkness, and to choose love, hope, and light. It wasn't an easy path, but it was a path worth taking. And for Emily, that was the most important message of all.